Roman art. Here's a map of Rome in 117 AD. Shows all of the areas that were part of the Roman Empire. Monarchy and Republic, 753 to 27 BCE. According to legend, Romulus founded Rome on April 21st, 753 BCE. In the 6th century BCE, Etruscan kings ruled the city, and Roman art was Etruscan in character. In the centuries following the establishment of the Republic in 509 BCE, Rome conquered its neighbors in Italy and then moved into Greece, gaining exposure to Greek art and architecture. Republican temples combined Etruscan plans with Greek orders, and houses had peristyles with Greek columns. The Romans, however, pioneered the use of concrete as a building material. The first style of mural painting, derived from Greece, imitates marble revetment, which is an ornamental facing, but the illusionism of the second style is distinctly Roman. Republican portraits usually depicted elderly patricians. The super-realistic likenesses celebrated traditional Roman values. We have Almatel, Oringator, which means orator, from Cortona, Italy, early 1st century BCE. It's made of bronze. It's 5 feet and 7 inches tall. Time coincides with Roman achievement of total domination of Etruria. An Etruscan, in Roman clothing, this figure is a masterwork, made as Etruscan culture was slipping away. The image, status, and stature of the magistrate in the course of performing the duties of his office commands respect, and no pose is more riveting than that of the orator. L'Orangator, the orator, is a hollow cast bronze statue that was recovered from Lake Terrasimeno in 1566. The statue is an important example of bronze sculpture in the later first millennium BCE, Italy, and indicates the gradual Romanization of Etruscan art. The life-size statue depicts a draped adult male standing with his right arm outstretched. The figure adopts a frontal pose with a slight contrapposto stance. Contrapposto refers to the figure shifting his weight onto his right leg. Based on the inscription on the statue, the figure is identified as Aulus Metellus or Almatel in Etruscan. He is clearly a magistrate, and his posture seems to be that of the orator who is in the process of addressing the crowd. He wears a tunic over which is draped a toga, which is the formal attire of the magistrate. The toga is wrapped around the body, leaving the right arm free. On his feet are high boots that were commonly worn by Roman senators. His expression and slightly open mouth make him a compelling figure. The statue was originally erected by the community in honor of Aulus Metellus. We have the Temple of Portunus. This is Rome, Italy, circa 75 BCE. 146 BCE, Greece became a Roman province. Etruscan plus Greek. The Temple of Portunus is a well-preserved late 2nd or early 1st century BCE rectangular temple in Rome, Italy. It's dedicated to the god of Portunus, a divinity associated with livestock, quays, and harbors. It's fitting given the building's topographical position near the ancient river harbor of the city of Rome. The temple has a rectangular footprint measuring roughly 36 feet by 62 feet. Its plan may be referred to as pseudo-peripteral instead of having a freestanding colonnade or row of columns on all 4 sides. The temple instead has freestanding columns on its facade with engaged columns on its flanks and rear. The pronaos, or the porch, of the temple supports an Ionic colonnade measuring 4 columns across by 2 columns deep, with the columns carved from travertine. The Ionic order can be most easily seen in the scroll-shaped capitals. There are 5 engaged columns on each side and 4 across the back. Overall, the building has a composite structure with both travertine and tufa being used for the superstructure. Tufa is a type of stone consisting of consolidated volcanic ash, and travertine is a form of limestone. A stucco coating would have been applied to the tufa, giving it an appearance closer to that of the travertine. The temple's design incorporates elements from several architectural traditions. From the Italic tradition, it takes the high podium, one ascends stairs to enter the pronaos, and a strong frontality. From Hellenistic architecture, comes the Ionic order columns, the engaged pilasters and columns. The use of permanent building materials, stone, as opposed to the Italic custom of superstructures in wood, terracotta, and mud brick, also reflects changing practices. The temple itself represents the changing realities and shifting cultural landscape of the Mediterranean world at the close of the first millennium BCE. We have a man with portrait busts of his ancestors from Rome, Italy, late 1st century BCE. This is the patrician's genealogy. The head of the standing figure, though ancient Roman in origin, is later replacement and not original to this statue. The separation of the head and the body, this work is understandable since in many instances the bodies of full-length portraits were produced in advance, waiting in the sculptor's workshop for a patron to commission a head with his or her own likeness that could be attached to it. Presumably the busts carried by this patrician were likewise only blocked out until they could be carved with the faces of the commissioner's ancestors. These faces share a striking family resemblance, and the stylistic difference reproduced in the two distinct bust formats reveals that these men lived in successive generations. They could be the father and grandfather of the man who carries them. We have head of a Republican priest circa 50 to 30 BCE. Verism is an interest in the faithful reproduction of the immediate visual and tactile appearance of subjects. It is unflattering realism. Republicans valued wisdom, determination, and experience. This is a denarius with a portrait of Julius Caesar from 44 BCE, silver. Propaganda, value portraits. Portraits of important people appear on local currency around the world. The same was true in ancient Rome, which began producing its first coinage in the late 4th century BCE. Early coins depicted the heads of gods and goddesses on the front side, often in profile, while the back depicted animals, natural resources, symbols, and references to historical events. It was not until 44 BC that the portrait of a living person, Julius Caesar, appeared on coins. Thereafter, profile portraits of rulers or other members of the imperial family became the standard subject on coins throughout the Roman Empire. Inscriptions on coins help identify the ruler. While the front side depicted the sovereign's portrait, the back was often used to communicate the ruler's accomplishments or aspirations. Until late antiquity, portraits usually appeared in profile. The tiny images were carved by engravers onto bronze dies, with one for the front and another for the back. The coins were then struck one by one in a process similar to how coins are created today. The front, obverse, of this coin portrays Julius Caesar facing right, and the back depicts the goddess Venus with a scepter and caduceus. Aerial view of the Forum in Pompeii, Italy, 80 BCE to 79 CE. Civic architecture, we have the Capitolium, which is a temple honoring Roman gods. The Forum is a public square. A basilica is a law court and chief administrative building. Before the Vesuvius eruption, the Forum was the center for public life at Pompeii. At the north end was the city's main temple, the Capitolium, and the southwest corner is where the basilica was located. Pompeii was destroyed by the eruption of Mount Vesuvius, a volcano near the Bay of Naples in 79 CE, making the town one of the best preserved examples of a Roman city, and tourists today marvel at the sensation of walking through a real ancient city. While the volcano took thousands of lives and made the region uninhabitable for centuries, the layers of volcanic ash preserved Pompeii in a manner unparalleled at other ancient Roman sites. Not only have the magnificent temples and villas of the town been preserved, but also one-room workshops, graves of lower-class citizens, and modest takeout restaurants frequented by the hoi polloi. Organic materials like food, clothing, and wood are most often preserved in nearby Herculaneum because of the differences in volcanic materials covering the two towns. And so Pompeii, the city of death, in fact, tells us more about daily life in the 1st century Italy than even the city of Rome itself. Pompeii, however, was not always a Roman town. By the mid-6th century BCE, both Etruscans and Greeks had settled in this area. Yet their specific contributions to the founding of Pompeii as a city are currently poorly understood, since architectural exploration of the earliest phases of the town have been scarce. The Doric temple and Pompeii's triangular forum nevertheless suggest a stronger Greek than Etruscan presence. The years 91 to 88 BCE were dramatic ones for Pompey, as it took part in a rebellion against Rome, the Social Wars. Having lost this battle of allied cities against the capital, the Roman general Sulla refounded the city as a proper Roman colony and settled as army veterans in Pompeii. The existing inhabitants of Pompeii must have resented this move, but when new public buildings, including the amphitheater, were constructed to meet the needs and desires of the new residents, this resentment may have eased. Later, the period of the early Roman Empire, 27 BCE to 69 CE, was a prosperous one for Pompeii. Large, luxurious homes, as well as imported goods from around the Mediterranean, show up at this time. Here we have the amphitheater, which is a double theater. It's located in the ancient Roman city of Pompeii and was buried by the eruption of Vesuvius in 79 AD. That also buried Pompeii itself in the neighboring town of Herculaneum. On the right, the painter included the awning, the velarium that could be rolled down to shield the spectators from the sun and the rain. This is the Brawl in the Pompeii Amphitheater. It's a wall painting from a house in Pompeii, Italy, 60 to 79 CE. Atrium of the House of the Veti, Pompeii, Italy. It's a mid-2nd century BCE, rebuilt in 62 to 79 CE. We have domestic architecture where the domus is a private house which had atriums, which is a large central reception area, and then an impluvium is a basin under the open roof. The House of the Veti is a Roman townhouse located in the ruined ancient city of Pompeii, Italy. A volcanic eruption destroyed Pompeii in the year 79 CE, thus preserving extraordinary archaeological remains of the Roman town as it was at the time of its cataclysmic destruction. Those remains constitute a nearly unparalleled resource for the study of the Roman world. A house is, of course, a dwelling, but is also a stage on which the rituals of daily life and social hierarchy would be performed. During the time of the Roman Republic, 5th through the 1st centuries BCE, ranking aristocratic families, patricians, used domestic display as a way to reinforce social position and as a way to advance their own fortunes, as well as those of their dependents and clients within the community. Since Republican society operated on the basis of this patron-client relationship, the domus played a key part in the reinforcement of social hierarchy, as a patron would receive his clients in the atrium of his domus each business day. While visiting with the patron, each client would get an eyeful of the patron's household wealth, thus applying implicit pressure on the patron to ensure that his house was tasteful and fashionable. Painting, we have a Dionysiac mystery frieze, the second style wall painting in room 5 of the Villa of the Mysteries in Pompeii, Italy, circa 60 to 50 BCE. In first style murals, the aim was to imitate costly marble panels using painted stucco relief. The style is Greek in origin and an example of Hellenization of Republican architecture. The second style painters created the illusion of an imaginary 3D world on the walls of Roman houses. The figures in this room are acting out the initiation rites of the Dionysiac mysteries. Painters would open up walls with vistas of towns, temples, and colonnaded courtyards. Convincing illusionism is due in part to the use of linear perspective. In the third style painters, they decorated the walls with delicate linear fantasies sketched on monochromatic backgrounds. Here we have fourth style wall paintings in the Ixion room, the Triclinium P of the House of the Veti in Pompeii, Italy, circa 70 to 79 CE. In the late fourth style, murals are often multicolored, crowded, and confused compositions with a mix of architectural views. They have framed mythological panels and first and third style motifs. Early Empire is 27 to 96 BCE. Augustus Ruled 27 to 14 CE. He's the first Roman emperor, defeated Mark Antony and Cleopatra at Actium in 31 BCE, and established the Pax Augusta, which is the beginning of the Pax Romana. Augustinian art revived the classical style with frequent references to Periclean Athens. Augustus's ambitious building program made lavish use of marble, and his portraits always represented him as an idealized youth. Under the Julio-Claudians, who ruled from 14 to 68 CE, builders began to realize the full potential of concrete in buildings such as that golden house of Nero. The Flavian emperors, 69 to 96 CE, built the Colosseum, the largest amphitheater in the world, and other grandiose buildings in Rome. The Arch of Titus celebrated the Flavian victory in Judea and Titus's apotheosis. The eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 CE buried Pompeii and Herculaneum. During the quarter century before the disaster, painters decorated walls of houses in the 3rd and 4th styles. Here we have the portrait of Augustus as general. He's perpetually youthful, athletic. It's from Prima Porta, Italy, early 1st century CE, copy of a bronze original of circa 20 BCE. Augustus is majestic, or the exalted one. Pax Romana is a Roman peace, which is a roughly 200-year-long period of peace and prosperity in Roman history, also known in his day as the Pax Augusta. During this time, the emperors commissioned a huge number of public works, imperial portrait statues, and monuments. The models for Augustus's idealized portraits depict him as never-aging youth were classical Greek statues. This portrait presents the armor-clad emperor as his role as a general. His breastplate indicates he's a warrior. It's carved in relief with numerous small figures depicting the return, thanks to the diplomacy of Augustus, of the Roman standards lost to Parthia by Mark Antony in the 40s BC and by Crassus in 53 BC. Confusion between God and man is intentional. It shows his sense of divine rule. He's barefoot, which indicates that he's on sacred ground. His right hand is in an orator pose. Maybe he held laurel branches. He may have carried a sword in his left hand pointing down. The small Cupid, son of Venus, at his feet is riding on a dolphin, which is Venus's patron animal. It's a reference to the claim that the Julian family were descended from the goddess Venus, made by both Augustus and by his great-uncle Julius Caesar, a way of claiming divine lineage without claiming the full divine status. Here we have Arapasus Auguste, altar of the Augustan peace in Rome, Italy, 13 to 9 BCE. The Arapasus Auguste is a monument celebrating the emperor's most significant achievement, the establishment of peace. The festivities of the Roman state religion were steeped in tradition and ritual symbolism, sacred offerings to the gods, consultations with priests and diviners, ritual formulae, communal feasting were all practices aimed at fostering and maintaining social cohesion and communicating authority. It could perhaps be argued that the Arapasus Auguste, the altar of Augustan peace, represents in a luxurious, stately microcosm the practices of the Roman state religion in a way that is simultaneously elegant and pragmatic. Here we have female personification, perhaps Tellus, panel on the east facade of the Arapasus Auguste in Rome, Italy, 13 to 9 BCE. Here we have the Pont de Garde, which is an aqueduct bridge. The Pont de Garde is an ancient Roman aqueduct bridge built in the first century AD to carry water over 31 miles to the Roman colony of Nimes. It crosses the river Gardon near the town of Vers Pont de Garde in southern France. The Pont de Garde is the highest of all Roman aqueduct bridges, and it's one of the best preserved. It was added to UNESCO's list of World Heritage Sites in 1985 because of its historic importance. The bridge has 3 tiers of arches, stands 160 feet high, and descends a mere 1 inch, a gradient of only 1 in 18,241, while the whole aqueduct descends in height by only 41 feet over its entire length, indicative of the great precision that Roman engineers were able to achieve using simple technology. The aqueduct formerly carried an estimated 8,800,000 gallons of water a day to the fountains, baths, and homes of the citizens of Nimes. It may have been used as late as the 6th century, with some parts used for significantly longer, but a lack of maintenance after the 4th century led to clogging by mineral deposits and debris that eventually stopped the flow of water. Here's a Colosseum, also known as the Flavian Amphitheater. It was estimated to hold 50 to 80,000 people. It had gladiatorial contests, mock sea battles, animal hunts, executions, reenactments of famous battles, and dramas based on classical mythology. It's made of stone, concrete, and tuff, which is a porous volcanic rock. It has 76 entrances and exits that circle the facade. The facade has engaged columns. The first story is Tuscan, second floor is Ionic, and third floor Corinthian, each supposedly being lighter in weight as it goes up. Above the squared windows at the top level are small brackets that are meant to hold flagstaffs. These staffs are the anchors for a retractable canvas roof used to protect the crowd on hot days. The Colosseum is just east of the Roman Forum. The construction began under Emperor Vespasian in AD 72 and was completed in AD 80 under successor and heir Titus. Further modifications were made during the reign of Domitian, 81 to 96. These three emperors are known as the Flavian dynasty, and the amphitheater was named in Latin for its association with their family name Flavius. At the bottom, you can see that's where the senators sat, and then from there, equestrians, and then intermediate categories, and then women and plebeians would sit at the top. Here's the exterior of the Colosseum. It combined the Greek post and lintel system of columns and entablature. Has what Roman form? It would be the arch. There's an interplay of barrel vaults, groin vaults, and arches in the Colosseum. Here's the Arch of Titus, Rome, Italy, after 81 CE. The Arch of Titus is a triumphal arch. It's a freestanding arch commemorating a triumph or formal victory celebration during which a victorious general or emperor paraded through Rome with his troops, captives, and booty. The Arch of Titus is a Roman triumphal arch which was erected by Domitian in circa 81 CE at the foot of the Palatine Hill on the Via Sacra in the Forum Romanum, Rome. It commemorates the victories of his father Vespasian and brother Titus in the Jewish war in Judea from 70 to 71 CE, when the great city of Jerusalem was sacked and the vast riches of its temple was plundered. The arch is also a political and religious statement expressing the divinity of the late Emperor Titus. This is a relief panel which shows the spoils of Jerusalem. It is part of a passageway in the Arch of Titus in Rome, Italy, after 81 CE. Soldiers are depicted looting a menorah from the Temple of Jerusalem. The menorah depicted on the arch served as a model for the menorah used in the modern emblem of the State of Israel. The classic example of the single aperture arch is the monumental Arch of Titus in the Forum Romanum. Relief panels in the passageways depict the triumph of Titus and spoils of Jerusalem, and a rectangular panel in the soffit of the arch shows his apotheosis. The arch was built by the Emperor Domitian shortly after the death of his older brother Titus. The Arch of Titus seems to have inspired the similar but more richly decorated Arch of Trajan, AD 114 at Benevento. Triumph of Titus. This is a relief panel in the passageway of the Arch of the Titus in Rome, Italy, after 81 CE. It's made of marble, 7 feet 10 inches high. So what are the allegorical figures in the Triumph of Titus relief meant to invoke? They're meant to invoke imperial virtues. A reconstructed relief panel from the original on the Arch of Titus, Rome, circa 81 CE. The scene showing the triumph of Titus is carved in 3/4 view and has Titus riding a 4-horse chariot. and shows him being crowned by the personification of victory. The goddess Roma stands in front, holding the bridle of one of the horses. The two figures to the right of the chariot are personifications of the people of Rome, naked torso, and the Senate wearing a toga. High Empire is 96 to 192 CE. The Roman Empire reached its greatest extent under Trajan, who ruled from 98 to 117 CE. The emperor's new forum and markets transformed the civic center of Rome. The Column of Trajan commemorated his two campaigns in Dacia in a 625-foot-long spiral frieze. Hadrian, ruled 117 to 138 CE, is emulating Greek statesmen and philosophers who was the first to wear a beard. His pantheon is a triumph of concrete technology and boasts the ancient world's largest dome. Under the Antonines, ruled 138 to 192 CE, the dominance of classical art began to erode, and imperial artists introduced new compositional schemes in relief sculpture and psychological element in portraiture. Here's the Forum of Trajan, the Apollodorus of Damascus, Forum of Trajan, Rome, Italy, dedicated 112 CE, the Temple of Trajan. And to the right, we have the Column of Trajan in the Forum of Trajan in Rome, Italy, dedicated 112 CE. At the Column of Trajan, we have battle scenes that take up a quarter of the whole narrative column. It's 128 feet high, 620 feet of narrative cycle wrapped around the column, telling the story of the defeat of Dacian. There's 150 episodes, 250 figures, 23 registers, and it is a burial chamber of Trajan, whose ashes were placed at the base. Column of Trajan, the triumph was a riotous military ritual celebrated by Romans over the course of centuries whenever their commander had won a spectacular victory. On the appointed day or days, the city would be overflowing with crowds, pageantry, spoils, prisoners, depictions, and souvenirs of foreign lands. But then, just as quickly as it began, the glorious tumult was over. The spectacles and the echoes of glory entrusted to the memory of those who had witnessed the event. Was the parade and its giant citywide party enough to commemorate the glorious deeds of Rome's armies, or should a more permanent form of commemoration be adopted? Being pragmatists, the Romans enlisted both means of commemoration, the ephemeral and the permanent. The Column of Trajan, dedicated in May of 113 CE, might be the crowning example of the inborn need to commemorate, in more permanent form, historical deeds that dominate the psyche of Roman art and artists. The Emperor Trajan, who reigned from 98 to 117 CE, fought a series of campaigns known as the Dacian Wars. Dacia, modern Romania, was seen as a troublesome neighbor by the Romans, and the Dacians were seen to pose a threat to the province of Moesia along the Danube frontier. In addition to Dacia, was rich in natural resources, including gold, that were attractive to the Romans. The first campaign saw Trajan defeat Dacian leader Decebalus in 101 CE, after which the Dacians sought terms from the Romans. Renewed Dacian hostilities brought about the Second Dacian War that concluded in 106 CE. Trajan's victory was a substantial one. He declared over 100 days of official celebrations, and the Romans exploited Dacia's natural wealth while incorporating Dacia as an imperial province. Here's the Pantheon, Rome, Italy, completed 125 CE. It is dedicated to all the gods. There's an inscription that says Marcus Agrippa, son of Lucius, having been consul 3 times, built it. Corinthian capitol porch in front of the building has the height of the building equals the width of the building. The interior of the building is based on the intersection of 2 circles. The thickness of the walls thinned as they went up to the top. Triumph of concrete construction. A circular opening known as the oculus lets the only light into the Pantheon. The purpose of the oculus was not only to illuminate the interior, but also to let those in the temple contemplate the heavens. The floor of the Pantheon is slanted to let rainwater drain from the building. Here's a model of Hadrian's building at Tivoli, circa 125 to 128 CE. The villa was constructed at Tibur, modern-day Tivoli, as a retreat from Rome for Roman Emperor Hadrian during the 2nd and 3rd decades of the 2nd century AD. Hadrian is said to have disliked the palace on the Palatine Hill in Rome, leading to the construction of the retreat. It was traditional that Roman emperors would construct villas as a place to relax from everyday life. Previous emperors and Romans with wealth such as Trajan had also constructed villas. Many villas were also self-sustaining, with small farms that did not need to import food. The picturesque landscape around Tiber had made the area a popular choice for villas and rural retreats. It was reputedly popular with people from the Spanish Peninsula who were residents in the city of Rome. This may have been contributed to Hadrian's choice of the property. Although born in Rome, his parents came from Spain, and he may have been familiar with the area during his early life. There may have also been a connection through his wife Vibia Sabina, 83 to 136 137, who was also the niece of the Emperor Trajan. Sabina's family held large land holdings, and it's speculated that Tiber property may have been one of them. A villa from the Republican era formed the basis for Hadrian's establishment. During the later years of his reign, Hadrian actually governed the empire from the villa. Hadrian started using the villa as his official residence around AD 128. A large court, therefore, lived there permanently, and large numbers of visitors and bureaucrats would have been entertained and temporarily housed on the site. The postal service kept it in contact with Rome, 18 miles away, where the various government departments were located. This is Canopus and Serapeum, Hadrian's villa. Hadrian was an architect and may have personally designed some buildings at his private villa at Tivoli. The Serapeum features a kind of pumpkin-shaped concrete dome that the emperor favored. The Caryatids, the area known as the Canopus, named after the Egyptian city, features long, stately, reflecting pool representing the Nile, which was lined with copies of famous works of sculpture, including the Caryatids or the Erechtheion, a statue depicting the Egyptian dwarf and fertility god. Here's the equestrian statue of Marcus Aurelius from Rome, Italy, circa 175 CE. This is an equestrian portrait. It's the Roman emperor's majesty and authority. Shows a gesture of clemency. It's a psychological element. There is a psychological element to the portrait. He seems weary, maybe saddened. In the late empire, Roman power began to erode. There's 2 centuries after August Pax Romana. Many challenged the authority of Rome. There was an assassination of Marcus's son Commodus in 192 CE, which ended the Antonine dynasty. The economy is in decline. The official state religion is losing ground to Eastern cults like Christianity. Civil conflict followed Commodus's death. African-born General Septimius Severus. The late empire, 193 to 337 CE, and the art of the Severans, who ruled from 193 to 235 CE, the non-naturalistic late antique style took root. Artists represented the emperor as a central frontal figure disengaged from the action around him. During the chaotic era of the soldier emperors who ruled from 235 to 284 CE, artists portrayed the short-lived emperors in portraits displaying unprecedented psychic intensity. Diocletian, who ruled from 284 to 305 CE, reestablished order by sharing power. Statues of the tetrarchs portrayed the 4 co-emperors as identical and equal rulers, not as individuals. Constantine, who ruled from 306 to 337 CE, restored one-man rule, ended persecution of Christians, and transferred the capital of the empire from Rome to Constantinople in 330. The abstract formality of Constantinian art paved the way for Ionic art of the Middle Ages. The Severans, Caracalla. This is the bust of Caracalla. His brow is knotted and he has a turned head. In 3rd century, this is a new style, especially with the hair. It's circa 211 to 217 CE. And then in the middle, we have a painted portrait of Septimius and his family from Egypt, circa 200 CE. Severins, this is the bath of Caracalla. It's Rome, Italy, circa 212 to 216 CE. The baths of Caracalla in Rome, Italy, were the city's second largest Roman public baths, or thermae, likely built around AD 212 and 216 to 217, during the reigns of Emperors Septimius, Severus, and Caracalla. They were in operation until the 530s and then fell into disuse and ruin. There were three main bath chambers: the frigidarium, or cold room, the caldarium, or hot room, and the tepidarium, or lukewarm room. During the frigidarium and the tepidarium was the great hall, roofed by an enormous vault with clerestory windows, a prototype of the vaulted naves of medieval churches. There were also open-air swimming pools. Marble was used lavishly, and sculpture, mosaics, frescoes, and other decorations ornamented the interior. Here's a diagram showing the baths of Caracalla. And then we have a reconstructive drawing on the right. This is the frigidarium of the baths of Caracalla, Rome, Italy, circa 212 to 216 CE. This is a heroic portrait of Tribonianus Gallus from Rome, Italy, 251 to 253 CE. It is an example of heroic nudity. It's an image of brute force. It's larger than life, and he has a wrestler's body. This bronze monumental statue is one of very few nearly complete Roman bronze statues of the 3rd century preserved today. It is a reminder that many of the disembodied portrait heads displayed in these galleries were once attached to freestanding sculptures whose original appearances were undoubtedly quite different. Portraits of the emperor served the highly important function in imperial propaganda of presenting the ruler to the public and of projecting the personality with which he wished to be perceived. Leadership and military strength are invoked in the heroic nudity of the figure and in the pose, which recalls a famous statue of Alexander the Great with a lance by Lysippus. In contrast to the idealized body, the portrait head represents the emperor with brutish realism. Trebonianus likely would have cradled a perizonium or a short sword in his left arm and held a spear in his upraised right hand. The statue has undergone several campaigns of restoration since its discovery in the early 19th century and was examined in great detail as part of the conservation treatment and preparation for this display. Visual examination inside and out made it clear identification of ancient and restored areas, which are indicated in the accompanying illustration. At least 3/4 of the statue is ancient. Despite the discrepancy in scale, the head belongs to the body, although the mantle draped over his left shoulder is a modern restoration. Cast edges beneath it confirm that the statue had similar embellishment in antiquity. The left foot, with its elaborately decorated open-fronted boot, appears to be ancient but may not belong. Diocletian and the Tetrarchy. Diocletian troops proclaimed him emperor. In 293, established the Tetrarchy. Augustus of the East. We have Augustus of the West and the Eastern and Western Caesars. He worked until Diocletian retired. Remained divided from East and West in the Middle Ages: Greek East, Byzantium, and Latin West. Portraits of the 4 tetrarchs from Constantinople, Italy, circa 300 CE. The Tetrarchy is ruled by 4. The portrait of the 4 tetrarchs probably depicts the 4 rulers of the empire instituted by Emperor Diocletian, the first tetrarchy. He appointed as co-Augustus Maximian and chose Galerius and Constantius I as their Caesars. Constantius was father to Constantine the Great. Dated to around 300 AD, the statue shows 4 emperors of Rome's brief tetrarchy, which saw the empire ruled by 4 people: 2 senior Augusti and 2 junior seniors. And Augustus teamed up with a Caesar to rule the eastern half of the empire, while the other 2 took control of the west. With its faded features, it's clear that the old sculpture group had spent many years exposed to the elements. The portrait of the four tetrarchs originally stood in Constantinople, the capital city of the Eastern Roman Empire, for almost 1,000 years. It was stolen by the Venetians when they sacked the city in the early 13th century during the Fourth Crusade. When the Venetian raiders ripped the artwork from its original post, they accidentally broke a foot off of one of the emperors. The limb remained lost until the 1960s when it was discovered in an archaeological excavation in Istanbul. The Venetians brought the rest of the statue, minus the broken foot, back to them to Venice, where it was guarded in a corner of St. Mark's Basilica since the Middle Ages. The sculpture is among the large amount of spolia, pieces taken from other structures adorning Venetian buildings. The Arch of Constantine, Rome, Italy, 312 to 315 CE. Much of sculptural decoration of Constantine's arch came from the monuments of Trajan, Hadrian, and Marcus Aurelius. Sculptures recut the heads of the earlier emperors to substitute Constantine's features. It commemorated Constantine's defeat of Maxentius. It is a monument of its era, exhibiting respect for the use of former monuments while rejecting the norms of classical design in its frieze. This is Hadrian and Constantine hunting a boar and sacrificing to Apollo at the top, which is akin to classical Greek art. And then at the bottom, we have Constantine addressing the Roman people in the Roman Forum, which is late antique.